Newsfirst, NEWSLINE with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Hello there, very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live, indeed. Live as usual from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And actually, it's rather nice to be back. But still, my guest this evening has unfortunately let us all down, including yourselves. He was supposed to be a former Minister, Social Premijanta, but has cancelled within 18 minutes of this program starting, or prior to its start. Now, I wanted to let you know a little bit of statistics. In nearly 7 years of doing this program, I have hardly ever had someone cancel at the last moment. We did have another member of Parliament who did that, a former actress who did that too to us many years ago. And this is, it's sad that people can't keep to their agreed diary. And I think from a public person, it borders the unacceptable. Still, my guest this evening is the manager of English News straight from the newsroom, impinging on her diary in producing this evening's primetime news. But it will be produced because that's what Newsfirst does. No matter what, the show goes on. All right? And here we are. Delighted to have on the program, of course, Ms. Azra Hassan. Hi.
Thank you, Faraz. It's so nice to have you back.
Thank you, thank you. It's good having you on the program, and I'm sorry that you've been taken away from the newsroom. But I guess.
But we have a solid team working behind the scenes.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wouldn't change this team for anything else in the world. Would you?
Faraz, no, definitely not. Faraz, how did you recover from COVID?
Actually, thank you for asking and giving me the opportunity to mention this. This is the 17th day after finding out. It was supposedly the dreaded news. But I must tell you this, that having taken both the vaccines, and I was about to do the third and I didn't, so it's arguable whether I would have got this, but who knows. Anyway, the fact is that after you get the vaccine, it helps to combat the disease, really. And there was a dull headache, there was a bit of temperature here and there, but by and large it was like having a bit of the flu, really. And lots of vitamin C's, lots of warm water, and the usual things like the kottamalis and the paspangos and all that business. Antibiotics from the doctor. And constant checking and isolating. And the idea, it does, one of the drawbacks is that once you get COVID, it does tend to make you fatigued, however fit
it's
you
called
are.
long COVID, if I'm not mistaken. We are not experts, but
no,
with experience.
But exactly, but you do feel tired. And we had on our program Professor Hilali Noordin, who revealed that he was developing a new drug, and that will help people post-COVID, and I think it'll be available in about a year.
I think for us now would be the ideal time to remind our viewers also to get the booster vaccine.
Absolutely.
And stay safe as much as possible.
From personal experience, I must say that it's absolutely imperative, essential, and responsible if you were to get all your jabs, 1, 2, and the booster 3. Now, responsible because if you don't take it, there is a risk that you will pass it on to others, and you will sort of add to the trouble of our country's health issues. After all, we are not a rich country.
Yeah, and it can easily overwhelm the hospital system.
Absolutely. We've only got 90,000 beds in the whole country anyway, and so there are accidents, there are people with diabetes, like I have diabetes, and so on. But yes, thank you also to all the messages I got from members of the public, our family of viewers, actually. Thank you. And now, Azra, what's going on in the newsroom tonight?
Faraz, when you talk about the news, the first thing that comes to my mind always, and has been for the past couple of weeks, are these queues to purchase goods, Faraz. Gas, milk powder. you still see people lining up outside stores, waiting to purchase these essential items, and every single person is constantly talking about the difficulties that they're facing. And on top of that, we are also experiencing power outages in the country. The minister, of course, assures that there won't be, but the Ceylon Electricity Board has a different view. But end of the day, it is the general public, it is you and I who are facing these difficulties. So I can't understand what they're going through right now.
You know, obviously, the hardships we are facing is a whole series of previous decisions and legislations that have come into sort of roost now. Years ago, you know, President Rana Singha Premadasa encouraged the formation, the establishing of all these factories. And the opposition at the time sort of shouted out and said, "Oh, you know, we are becoming a nation of tailors, stitching underwear for foreign markets." Now, be that as it may, you know, if we had several more MASs and Brandixes and whoever knows, all the other tailors for that matter, I would love to see the balance, you know, the reserves at the central bank. I'm sure there would be more. So there's nothing wrong. But over the years, various decisions, and it's pathetic that after 73 years of being in charge of our own independence, you know, of our lives, that we are not sufficient with rice. And now we have to import it from some other blessed country. And it won't be organic either.
Yeah, and we were at one point an agricultural driven country.
Absolutely.
We were proud about the agricultural sector. We had the farmers, you know, so I sort of feel like we're going back in time for us, you know, the whole queue system, the token system. I wasn't there, but you were.
Well, yes, we had people who would go to the different queues. You know, you get so many chundus of rice and so on. And it's absolutely pathetic and ironic that Sri Lanka is now looking at going back to those ages. We are supposedly on our way to becoming a great economy in this part of the world, and this is not the way it's going through. Obviously, there have been some disastrous decisions, like the policy change in terms of fertilizer. Although it is a good idea to move to a green economy, you can't do it overnight. And it's sad that all these Vietmaga people and all these so-called professionals who were behind the move to have Gotabaya Rajapaksa, our president, elected as president, that they seem to have under-informed the president or have been overly ambitious in their thought process, and it has cost the country very badly indeed. On top of that, of course, nobody expected the COVID-19, and we lost maybe $5 billion from tourism.
But we see other countries moving forward despite the fact that
indeed, and Sri Lanka too, Azra, is moving forward. I have reports from hoteliers. I spoke to a hotelier.
In terms of tourism?
Yes, I spoke to a hotelier in Negombo who owns a hotel there. He told me that in December they had 51% occupancy. In this month, in January, it's slightly down, it's about 49%. Forward bookings are not looking that great. They're seeing some cancellations. But then Europe is also having its own problems with COVID and so on. You know, somebody who recently arrived in London yesterday from Sri Lanka told me that he was utterly disappointed because when he arrived in London, they didn't ask him anything about his vaccinations.
You mean in Sri Lanka?
No, going back to London,
right.
From Sri Lanka. So he had all these PCR tests, this, that, and the other done. And there's another thing I want to tell you, that, you know, we need to highlight the good. If you want a PCR test in a hurry and you want the result in a hurry, if you go towards the airport, there is a state-of-the-art testing facility there. And I must tell you, they promised me 3 hours. 1 minute to 3 hours, they sent it to me by SMS, which is good service, well delivered. Thank you for that.
So not everything is all doom and gloom.
No, it's not. And the problem is, I think that we need to understand that Sri Lanka has had many gilded prospects in 1948 when we got our independence. Unfortunately, a series of different decisions, poor decisions by the politicians throughout the years. I'm not blaming the Rajapakses or the Wickramasinghas, but throughout the years, they've all tried to do their best, of course, is what we hope. But the fact remains that today we are in a pathetic situation because of these poor decisions. But
Whereas I had an interesting conversation with the Hungarian Foreign Affairs and Trade Minister, Mr. Peter Szijjártó, and just one of the parts that caught my attention was when he said that national interest, putting national interest first, has always been their topmost priority, and that it is important for prosperity. For us, their cabinet of ministers, they only have 12 cabinet of ministers, just 12 ministers running all ministries, and Mr. Peter Szijjártó, the minister in charge of foreign affairs, is also the minister in charge of trade and also the power sector. So I asked him, you're holding so many ministerial portfolios, how do you do this? His response was, we like it and we're doing it. We're doing it for the people. Do you see the same mentality here in Sri Lanka?
Well, it's a pity that we don't have that mentality, because as you know, when we've traveled to Sri Lanka with the Gammada team, we discovered scores of people who I think was best described by late chairman. It rang a bell when he said that these are the forgotten people of the country. But News First and our Gammada movement hasn't forgotten, because there are people out there who actually do believe in the system, and they're hoping time and time again that their lot in life, their facilities, their roads, their electricity, their water, their opportunities, their education will all improve with perhaps the next one. But this has been going on for 73 years. And the education system, you are youthful enough to understand this. On average, around 330 to 350,000 students enter the education system every year. But when it's time to go to university, many years later, they find with the greatest shock that the state can only offer approximately 35,000 spaces. The private sector, another 15,000. We have got another about 114,000 for vocational and tertiary education. The rest, approximately 50%, are just left in the lurch. So is it any surprise that the Handias, the junctions, are full of three-wheelers? Because these youngsters think, well, if you get a three-wheeler, that's the bee's knees. But are we prepared to be a nation of three-wheel drivers?
Definitely not for us. And one other point I would like to add to that is the fact that there are long lines of students standing outside the Consular Affairs Division of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, waiting to leave the country, either to get education or to seek employment.
Now, here's another startling statistic. Approximately 25,000 students, Sri Lankan students, study abroad. Why? Because of the same thing that I've just mentioned. There's not enough space. Only the top so many percent can physically get into the state university system, and the private sector is only 15,000. So that's the problem. So all these people are going out. Now 25,000 students, on average, if they're spending $35,000 a year for the year one, it comes to around $700 million year one. Year two, another 700, and then another 700 in year three. Grand total, just over $2 billion for every 3 years. Now then, it's $2 billion that we didn't have. But if we invested $2 billion in the education, in expanding the education system, encouraging the private sector to get in on the act, and facilitating the market for expanding the private education and so on, because the government can't do everything. And in Sri Lanka we have this almost sort of God-given right that the government must provide everything.
It's simply not possible.
It's not possible. On that note, shall we go for a break and let's look at the headlines from your young team out there on the third floor?
Yes, please.
And of course we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
TV1 රැස්වීදෙන ජීවිතේ.
Pressure exerted on the people, taken out on the streets. Queues are worrying than the increasing prices, says Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa.
බඩු ගණන් යනවට වඩා පෝලිම් ඇතිවෙන එක හොඳ නෑ කියලා අපි දන්නවා.
Will China recover Sri Lanka's economy?
චීන රෙමින්බිය ලෝකයේ තියෙන බලගතුම මුදල් ඒකකය. ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් එක වගේම international reserve currency.
Dr. Vijay Dasa raises concerns over Minister Bass's dual citizenship. Maithripala Sirisena responds to Ravi Karunanayaka's challenge.
මොකද්ද මම දන්නේ නැහැ.
ඔබතුමාගේ ෆයිල් එකක් තියෙනවද ඔබතුමාලගේ?
මං ආගෙන හිටියේ මම ඊයේ රෑ වෙලා ආවේ රත්නපුරේ ඉඳලා. මාත් බලන්න ඕනේ හොයලා මොනවද.
President and the Prime Minister felicitate Venerable Muruthettuwe Anandathero. Search operation underway to locate the crocodile.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live, broadcasting live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. My guest is the manager of English News from Newsfirst, Miss Azra Hassan. Azra, many people sent us messages about the non-availability of our guest. The guest was supposed to be Mr. Sushil Premajanta, who is an interesting guest because he is a senior minister actually, and he recently got the sack. But President Gota didn't quite like what he said, and so we thought we'd give him an opportunity to ask him all about that and his plans for the future and so on. A whole list of questions for him. Still, everybody's asking about this business, about the $2 billion that we could save if our students had the opportunities in Sri Lanka. Somebody is asking what happens if we did have all these universities. Well, I would say that people who go abroad won't go abroad. We had Rehanja Wickrama say that yesterday. He went to Australia. He simply didn't have enough grades to get into that limited space at the state universities here, so he had to go somewhere else. So if we did invest all this money and have more universities here, the public will be far better educated, and they'll be able to see through the lies and rubbish that usually spews forth from the majority of our politicians.
And right now, for us, you can do a lot with 2 billion. Our reserve.
Yes, our reserves is just 3.1 billion.
This includes the Chinese swap.
Indeed. Now then, as we're talking about that, Governor Cabral seems to have a habit of sending out tweets, and then everybody gets all excited. Do you think he'll send a tweet tomorrow morning?
About what for us? Can't really make a prediction there.
No, you can't. Well, he says he's going to pay the $500 million.
Oh yes, he's very confident about it.
Yes, and I think that they probably have something up their sleeve, and you know they're putting out the news out in small doses. But do you think that's fair?
It's a little concerning though for us, because just this week we had 5. The current and the former presidents of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce appearing on a Face the Nation program, having a unified stance about why we shouldn't go for settle the debt repayment, the ISBs, the international sovereign bonds, instead to go ahead with debt restructuring. Now even S&P SL20, the rating agency, has downgraded Sri Lanka from CCC plus to CCC, which Governor Cabral says he's very concerned about, because he says we are confident that we can pay. But many experts, they keep saying that if you don't pay this, you can buy fuel with that. You can help the importers in the country. So is that really the priority right now?
Well, you know, the danger, of course, of not meeting one's obligation is that it then becomes more difficult to raise more money, and therefore we have to find the middle ground. It's a very Buddhist thing, actually, or not only Buddhist. It can be any religion. The middle ground is the best ground.
Yeah,
and
it's a philosophical thing.
Yes, you know. So it's the same, I suppose, with economics. You have to find the middle ground. There will be different viewpoints. We had I saw those 5 presidents, past presidents of the chambers on there, and they all had their own take. But in all fairness, this is not politics. It's about economics.
Yeah.
And all of them want what is best for all of us, and for themselves too. So there's nothing wrong in having a healthy debate.
Yeah, I mean, you should consider all options before making a serious decision which can impact millions of lives for us. I mean, this is what happened, according to experts. This is what happened with the decision on the fertilizer transition. And look where we are now.
Now then, thank you very much to everybody who sent their messages. And I have a dare too, because well, thank you for one person who says that, do you know what, I'm going to read this out, because rather than me interpreting all these things, I just hope that whoever sent this has had their, if they wear glasses, that they wear their glasses or their contacts, you know, because otherwise I'll end up reading something. But anyway, here we go, right? This is from Member of the Public. The situation is even worse than Mrs. B's time, but the rhetoric is the same. Her cry was that they will bring rice from the moon if necessary. It ended up with people having rice banned on certain days, manioc on certain days, and removing critters from the bread you ate. By the way, watching Azra San and listening to her is far more pleasant than what we would have done with your guest who decided not to show up. And I have read it out. Now then, isn't that marvelous that our viewers can interact with us?
It's wonderful, you know, getting live feedback, and we are doing this for the people, for us.
Absolutely.
If we don't know how they feel, this is what we do through Gammadda as well. We go to them because we want to know what you feel and how you see things. And
because we want to fix it and make their life a little bit that much different.
We can't really do a lot, but sometimes we are trying, right?
But to all those people who've supported Gammadda in their own way, for everyone, you know, thank you, and thank you again. Because without you, those people's lives would be that much more difficult. Do you remember the late Bandula Jayasekara and I joined the team, and we went up to Kalawan Chikuri,
yes,
which is a little bit above sort of Batiklo, and we did a program seated around a paddy field. And Bandula did Pathikada, and then he joined me on Newsline. And we had so many people. We actually had an audience. They came and they sat around the buns of the paddy fields, and they, you know, they all had their own troubles to tell us, which they did. And I starkly remember going into this little house, which is, you know, a thatched house. It was superiorly clean. It was well maintained and well kept. The girl was 15, she was studying for her O-levels, and I said to her, "Where are your books?" Because I couldn't see any. And she said, "Please look up." And I did. And her books were in plastic bags and hung on the roof. So I said, "Why?" It was very low, you have to remember this, you know, it was just about maybe 6 foot, the roof. Yeah. And she said, "Well, at least twice a year we get floods, and all this house, everything gets sort of, you know, washed away. And she says, when it's in bags, it's easier, just get the bag and then I go." That kind of commitment to education must be backed by every opportunity for them to have further education, so that people who talk about bringing rice from the moon will get hooted and booted out and will be never elected to office, because that's all a bunch of rhetoric and rubbish, absolute rubbish.
The Gammadda movement is driven by the News First force, the reporters, you and I and everybody else in the newsroom, and it's more like an additional job. But one might wonder as to why we do it, given that it's exhausting and tiring when you have to travel far. But this is exactly why we do it for us, because we get to see a part of this country that we don't see on a daily basis. I think we may be taking things for granted, because that's how I felt when I went to those villages and met with those people, and when I saw that they don't have the basic necessities like water, or a place to live, or the human-elephant conflict.
I know that we can't go back and change what happened, but I just like to remind everybody that this Gammadda movement was the idea of our late chairman, Mr. Rajendran Rajamahendran, whose 6th month anniversary falls on the 25th of this month. Now, this was his idea, the Gammadda movement.
And the support, the push.
And it was absolutely wonderful. It was wonderful. I remember him standing in the car park and giving out little certificates of appreciation to our staff, because, by the way, this is part of life at News First, Gammadda. You find people, I remember young David Paldano must have been pretty new when he was here, when he joined, and this poor chap went out for to cover some flood event, and he was covered in water over his knees, and he still stood there and did a stand-up.
I think he was a couple of months into the job, very new.
Very new. Yeah. And I will forever and a day always remember David Paldano standing there and probably thinking, what on earth am I doing? Is this the job I really wanted? But that's the passion. And News First, life at News First and being a journalist is all about expressing and living your passion. And on behalf of everybody who's passed through these doors, I want to say, I hope I'm not overstepping my mark, but I'd like to say on behalf of them all, thank you, Capital Maharaja organization. Thank you for the opportunity, because without that, we wouldn't be able to live our passion and help the people out there and represent the people's voice. They're voiceless. Sometimes when you're reading the news, Azra, do you think, wow, I'm doing this because people out there, they have no voice?
Oh no, it's sacred for us, it's sacred. When you sit there on the anchor seat and when you deliver the news to them, and when you know what exactly they're going through, especially because of these movements like Gammadda, it's sacred. And it's such a whole lot of pressure on you, because you know how much they rely on you, and that's great.
Azra Hassan, thank you very much for being my guest on Newsline Live this evening. Mr. Susha Premajayantha hopefully will join us at some point. But it's sacred. Representing the people's voice, it's sacred. Thank you. Take care, and as always, God bless you.